Good morning. I want to welcome you to Congregation Beth Adam. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr. I'm the Rabbi Emeritus of the congregation, and we are delighted that you are joining us for this Yom Kippur morning service. Unfortunately, Rabbi Werber, our new rabbi, has COVID and was not able to be here last night and won't be here today. We wish her well and hope that she's feeling better, and that those of you online with her will offer your support and best wishes to her. Now, you can be online on 3 different platforms. You might be on bethadam.org or one of our 2 Facebook pages. So if wherever you are, our Facebook page, Beth Adam's Facebook page, or our Jewish community's Facebook page, or bethadam.org, you can chat. Of course, when you're chatting, we want you to be welcoming and kind. Think of yourself as being in the sanctuary itself. Now, not everybody likes the chat. Some folks find it distracting. If you do find it distracting, you can hover your cursor over the video screen, and usually in the lower right-hand corner, there is a place for you to make the video very large, and you don't have to look at the chat that's going on. So that's an option for you if you don't want to participate in that. Additionally, we do have people checking our tech, and we're in good shape. We know that. So if you're having technical problems, if your video is problematic or your sound is problematic, it is very, very likely it is on your end. So check your own settings. Make sure you change the sound levels if you need to do that. We have people monitoring it to make sure that things are working correctly. Additionally, if you like what you're watching and participating in, share it with your friends if you're on home. You can, send somebody a text or even call them up and say, hey, I'm participating in a very interesting and unique service. And because our services are streamed, and then once they're streamed, they're actually recorded, you can suggest to somebody perhaps in California who didn't want to get up at 7:30 in the morning that they could watch the service some later time. And if you missed one of our services, perhaps you missed our Rosh Hashanah morning service or evening service, or missed Yom Kippur service last night, you can go back in our archives and watch those services. So feel free to do that. If you value what we're doing, if you're finding it meaningful to you, we'd love if you'd be willing to make a donation. Make a donation. You go to bethadam.org. bethadam.org, and there on our homepage there is a place to make a donation. We appreciate it. Not only is the money obviously appreciated, but knowing that people support and value what we're doing is important as well. Also at bethadam.org, that's where you're going to learn most about our calendar, what we're doing. We don't have religious school tomorrow, but religious school and adult education begins next week. You'll also find out when our adult educations are and the topics for all of that. So we're delighted that you're here. Oh, if you have a copy of the service from prior years, we're doing the same service we've done the last several years. So you can follow along, and if you don't have a service, if you just listen, because we read the entire service. Glad you're here, and we'll be beginning the service in a few moments.
one side, right?
I don't know what happened. Don't forget to turn off your phone.
So, Shabbat Shalom and Boker Tov, good morning. Good to see you all here for this Yom Kippur morning service and a Shabbat service. At the beginning of our service, we want to welcome the Shabbat. I'm going to encourage you, if you have a cell phone, to put it on silent. Really look, make sure it's on silent, that'd be great. I want to welcome those people online. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Robert Barr. I'm the Rabbi Emeritus here. Unfortunately, Rabbi Werber has COVID, wasn't able to be here last night, isn't able to be here this morning. She's online. We wish her well for a speedy recovery. So you're going to have me all day. And as I think it was Mark Twain who said, if I had more time to edit, it would all be shorter. So, what the hell? What are you going to do? That's one of those things. So we want to welcome you, and we're going to begin our service on page 84. Put away the pencil and the paper. Put away the notebook and the keys. Set aside the shovel and the hammer. Rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working. No laboring, no straining. Not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. we are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Now we continue our service on page 56 for our Yom Kippur morning service. And we begin with how good and how pleasant it is, how pleasant are the tents of Jacob and the dwelling places of Israel that we can be here together. Each morning, we are confronted with the most common and most profound of miracles. We awaken with a fresh quota of time. 24 hours is always our allotment. No one can take time from us, and no one receives any more or any less. Time cannot be bought. Our awakening should become a personal contract. It is a time for projects, resolutions, for the birth of action. Yet there are many of us who are always waiting to live. We are waiting until things change, until there's more time, until we settle down, until we get our work done. Until some of us are desperate for the will to proceed. The water of time moves on with or without our control, whether to drift passively with the current or to direct our course. That is the choice presented with every tick of the clock. Morning, this morning, brings with it a promise of a new day, the opportunity that yesterday's intentions may be fulfilled. Morning also serves to remind us that another day is gone. Yesterday's acts and omissions are forever. They can never be entirely reclaimed. 10 days ago on Rosh Hashanah, we began our journey through this treasured period of reflection and challenge. We committed ourselves by saying, during the remaining high holiday services, may we examine the paths we have walked so that we can plan a course for the coming year. Now that we approach the conclusion of this journey, we ask ourselves, how well we honored that commitment. Have we engaged in a searching self-examination, or as those words passed from our lips on Rosh Hashanah, did they also pass from our minds? The gift of our tradition is a time of year set apart to reconcile our values with our actions. The blessing of each new day is the opportunity to change. Like a blank page staring out at us, Yom Kippur urges us to fill the space. We record our deeds of the past year. We remember with honesty our joys and sorrows, our victories and defeats, our glories and our shame. It is only through remembrance, uncolored by protective fantasies, unshaded by what we wish we had taken place, that we can assess the truths of our existence. It is through memory, allowing ourselves to feel the pain and the pleasure of the past, that we can chart a course for the future. We use this moment to fill our blank page with honest reflection, with sallow introspection. We know that what we discover can guide our actions in the coming year, so that we will live our lives in harmony with the values we cherish. Yom Kippur, the day of honesty. We have acted against life, both willingly and unwillingly, both knowingly and unknowingly. We've acted against life when we block our ears to the cries of the hungry. We've denied the best within us when we allow our comfort to insulate us from the plight of the dispossessed. We've acted against life when we silence our tongues in the presence of wrongdoing. We've denied the best within us when we give in to the excuse that our voice is so different. We are sorry for our actions. We have acted against life when we allow the moments to tick by without challenging ourselves. We've denied the best within us when we accept mediocrity and fail to test our limits. We've acted against life when we let pain and illness blind us to beauty. We have denied the best within us when we have enjoyed the seduction of self-pity. We are sorry for our actions. We've acted against life when we succumb to the intoxication of ambition at the expense of our family. We've denied the best within us when we are too busy to spend time with those we love. We've acted against life when we worry about the future, regret the past, and ignore the present. We've denied the best within us when we've grown old for child's play. We've acted against life at this moment if we let this opportunity for self-examination drift by due to complacency or fear. We deny the best within us when, knowing our principles, we choose not to act upon them. We are sorry for our actions. We have transgressed against life when year after year we mouth the words of these services, never turning our words into actions.
On Yom Kippur, we recall not only what has been, but we imagine what might be. We hold before our eyes a vision of a better self, a more perfect world. Living within our minds and hearts are the ideals which challenge the reality we now experience. Knowing that we do not live up to our noblest expectations, we may become frustrated and disillusioned. We judge ourselves harshly because we do not fully attain all that we envision. But our vision of a nobler, more ethical self serves to prod us to action. It provides us a goal, though we recognize our reach is too short. We can dream of perfection, though we know it will forever remain a dream. We accept our limits, even as we continue to envision what might be. We pledge ourselves to stretch our reach, though we know it will forever fall short. Rather than becoming disheartened, we are invigorated by the challenge.
be fulfilled, be fulfilled, be fulfilled, oh, be fulfilled, be
So it's our custom for those who wish to stand as we take the Torah from the ark. We stand in honor of the past, and we stand in anticipation of the future. The Torah gives us insight into the fundamental questions asked by our ancestors, reminding us that these questions are universal. We are bound generation to generation by virtue of the search rather than the answers we uncover. Each generation is challenged to find its own meaning, its own purpose. As our ancestors sought wisdom and understanding in their age, we are inspired to do the same. They sought their own answers with sincerity of heart, integrity of mind, passion of spirit. The Torah brings us closer to the events of the distant past, making us aware of the diverse and complex history of our people. Knowing that no one document can contain all of our people's wisdom, we hold the Torah as a symbol of our search to gain understanding. Torah is more than the words written upon the scroll. It is a symbol of the Jewish experience, the pain and the joy, the joy and the sorrow and the promise. The Torah links us to past generations, calling us to assume our place in the evolution of our people. We seek our own answers with sincerity of heart, integrity of mind, passion of spirit. We embrace the Torah with pride and awe, recognizing the responsibility we now carry. We embrace the Torah with respect for our past and a commitment to the future. May we gain insight from its words and from all sources of wisdom. May we be worthy of our task to hold our Torah with integrity and pride. Please be seated. You can sing. So the choir is wonderful, but you're allowed to sing with them. It's okay. I mean, it's like, you're so quiet. So sing, it's okay. So, last week on Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Werber read from this Torah and read the story of Abraham leaving his home. Lech Lecha, that's the beginning of the tale. And so we're going to continue that. I read a midrash. If you were joined us last night, I read a midrash about Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the portion that we're going to read today. So it's a continuation of the Abraham story, Abraham being the mythic family, the mythic father of the Jewish family. That's sort of how he's perceived. When we were talking about this, when Rabbi Werber and I were planning the high holidays and planning what Torah portion, we settled on this. We liked the sort of that upward sweep, the beginning, the continuation. And then as we started thinking about which other portion after we read Lech Lecha, which we would read, I really went to Sodom and Gomorrah. This is one of my favorite passages. It is a great passage. It has some really fascinating theological questions, moral questions. It raises all kinds of things. And while it was written literally centuries ago, it resonates with questions that we still, as modern people, wrestle with. Now, I want to remind you, before I start reading this is a legend. It is a myth. It's not true. It is not historical. Okay? I feel obligated to say that more and more because there are people who run around more and more claiming that this document represents history, that it is authentically, it is like a little textbook that tells us exactly what happened. It doesn't. These are legends, these are stories that our ancestors wrote. And why we still read them in part is because legends and stories that have good questions still resonate. So that's why we do that. So it raises different questions, and every time we look at it, it can raise different questions. So that's why we do this, and it connects us to our ancestors, and it's a whole set of studying and learning, turning it over and over again. So you all know the story, right? Does anyone here not know Sodom and Gomorrah? Other than some of the kids maybe, but any adult here has never heard the references to Sodom and Gomorrah? It's classic. That's why it works. It's the tale of a town, or two cities really. A tale of two cities. Wow, I wonder now where we got that. I just thought of that. 47 years of doing this, and it just came to my mind. Isn't it wonderful? I said if I had more time, I would have re-shortened. So what's crazy about the story? You know the story. So there's, God decides, and we'll read it, is going to destroy the cities because of a sin. Now you got to think about this. God is so angry. We have a God in the Bible, in the early Bible, has an anger management problem, and he really, when you think about it, struggled to be competent. He creates two people, Adam and Eve. That's the story. And they were just supposed to sit there. What happens? Disobey, and he says, you're all going to die. The world gets populated, doesn't like what's going on. Story of Noah, kills everybody. Start again. All of a sudden, now there's this town. We're going to kill them. God doesn't do so well. And it's an interesting challenge about what that means, why this keeps on happening, and that he wants to eradicate his creation. It's a sort of a problematic issue about theology and about what the expectations are, about what it means to be human, or certainly what it means to be obedient to that God. This story, I just want to remind you, this story comes before the story of the binding of Isaac. So this is chapter 18. Binding of Isaac is chapter 22. That's when God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son. We're going to deal with that in a little bit later. One of the questions that I've gotten over the years of being the rabbi of Beth Adam is, do we excise God's name from the Torah? People know that at Beth Adam our liturgy is different. We don't use traditional blessings. We don't reference God in our liturgy overtly. And so people said, well, so how do you read from the Torah? And I say, with a pointer. And we read it as it is because this is our ancestors' legends. This is what they created. It's not a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of who they were. And we do it only justice by reading it as it is, understanding that God in this story, like God throughout the Torah, is a character. And he's a character that changes temperament. It's not the same, while the name may seem the same, the God changes, and we're going to explore that more a little bit later on. So now we're going to read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it begins, here it goes. Vayomer Adonai v'tzarakat Sodom v'Amorah ki rabah v'hachtatam ki hakvad me'od. Then God, and this is always a problem because in the text, what I'm looking at, it says Yud He Vav He, 4 letters, right? The 4 letters, the tetragrammaton, the 4 unpronounceable letters of God's name. So there's different words. Some of you may, if you read the beginning of the Bible, it says Bereshit bara Elohim at the beginning. The word Elohim is God at one part of the Torah, and Yahweh is how it's typically pronounced, is another name for God. But it's unpronounceable. Some of you have grown up with it, you'd say, and I did that, I read it, Vayomer Adonai. That's what we say. Why do we not pronounce Yud He Vav He? Because it's God's personal name. God is not a name, God is a position. It's like calling somebody a king. It's a position. You can say the king and you know what you're referencing, but it's not the king's name. God is a position and Yahweh is his name. And only on Yom Kippur did the high priest say God's name in the Holy of Holies. That was a place in the temple. If you've ever been to Israel, you'll know where the Dome of the Rock is. That was where the temple was, the first and second temple. That's where the animal sacrifices were taking place. And the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, actually with a rope around and it was always around his waist, and say God's name, for in case he died in there, they could pull him out because no one else was allowed there. And the reason you can't say God's name is you get power. If someone knows your name and you're walking down the street and they yell, "Hey, Bob," what do? You turn around. So the tradition is no one gets to call God out. And so what happened is how that name is pronounced, how that Yud He Vav He is said was totally lost because there are no vowels in the Bible. So it was in the Torah. It was written as a consonantal language. So how it was pronounced has been lost. So it says, when God said, and he was talking to, not sure who, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin is so grave. What was the sin? Now, there's some people who like to talk about homosexuality. That's the sin. Tradition doesn't say that. That is not what this is about. It was about, and different rabbis have done different explorations of this, it was about inhospitality. People were inhospitable. They treated everyone badly, male and female. That was what the issue was about. And that's what this turns out. And in a second, I'll show you how old that tradition is. And it continues the story. Ardena v'ar'eh hak tza'akata haba'a alai asu kalal v'im lo edea. I will go down, this is God talking, very anthropomorphic God. Have to go down, right? This is that, right? This is how we know this is of a particular period when anthropomorphism of theology of gods was very common. I will go down to see whether they have acted against me I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. Outcry. What was that outcry? So in Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, one of the prophets, Ezekiel says, only this, the sin of your sister Sodom, arrogance. She and her daughters had plenty of bread and untroubled tranquility, yet she did not support the poor and the needy. This is a biblical prophet already writing that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was arrogance, that people had money, they had food, and they wouldn't share it. It's that people, this town, the townspeople treated the widows and the poor badly. Now it's interesting in a Midrash Pirkei Eliezer. So I talk about Midrashim Jewish legends. So back in the 3rd and the 4th centuries, they were writing midrash about this particular Torah portion. And it says that Lot's daughter was convicted of giving bread to a poor person each time she went to the well for water. And as the people began to execute her, she was killed for being kind. She cried out to God, and it was that cry that God heard. The outcry was the outcry of someone being executed for giving food to a poor person. That's the tradition that of this particular Torah portion. And unfortunately, that piece gets lost. It is not what we talk about. And frankly, in the world we live in, we should be talking more about that than about human sexuality as the cause and the root of all this. V'yifnu misham ha'anashim v'yalchu Sodom v'Avraham odenu omed lifnei Adonai. And the agents went out from there. There were some angels of God there. They left Sodom while Abraham remained standing before God. And so we know what's going to happen, right? Abraham's going to start arguing with God. What's also fascinating about this story, the people who he was arguing for weren't Jews. They weren't members of his family. He was arguing for strangers. In fact, we would probably call them pagans, because they were not that, which is unfortunately has become a pejorative term. It shouldn't be a pejorative term. It was people who existed prior to the advent of Judaism. So here is the mythic father of the Jewish people standing before God, arguing for people he didn't know, the stranger. And he was arguing, saying, we have to treat people appropriately. V'yigash Abraham v'yomer ha'af tispet tzadik im rasha. And Abraham came forward and said, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? Already it was known that God was going to destroy the entire city, and that meant innocent people were going to get killed. That's a question we've all been wrestling with this year in war. Innocent people get killed. How do we deal with that moral question? Abraham asked it, or our ancestors who wrote this story centuries ago, more than 2,000 years ago, they asked that question. Innocent people get killed. How do we deal with that? What's the equation? It is a moral question that has been echoing through the generations. Ula yesh 50 tzadikim b'toch ha'ir, ha'af tispeh v'lo tiseh, le'makom lama'an 50 tzadikim asher b'kirba. What if there are 50 innocent people? Will you wipe the entire place out if you can find 50? Won't you save it for 50 people? Think of the story. It's incredible what our ancestors wrote. Here's Abraham standing before the ultimate authority of the universe, arguing. What an incredibly powerful story. Here is Abraham. He doesn't abdicate his responsibility to defend and protect innocent people, not knowing how many there were, people that weren't people he even knew. It certainly seems like a lesson we should be thinking about. Standing up for those who need to be, whose voices aren't being heard, to take responsibility, to have agency, even against the powers that be. That is a powerful message. Halila lacha ma'asot kedavar hazeh lahamit tzadik im rasha v'hayat hatzadik kirasha halila lacha hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat. Far be it from you, this is Abraham speaking to God, to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that the innocent and the guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. This is Abraham talking to God, looking at God's face. Aren't you ashamed, he says? Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? Which is a fascinating idea. Historically, people say God is the source of all good. God is the source of justice. God knows right from wrong. But here is Abraham saying, you don't know what justice is. You may be God. You may be able to kill me and an entire town, but you don't even have a basic concept of justice. You should be ashamed. That's the kind of Abraham I like. It's a great philosophic and theological issue about agency, about power, about standing up to authority. Now, we know what happens. Abraham negotiates. Negotiations, that's the sort of thing you do. Starts at 50, goes down to 10. There's all kinds of arguments. Maybe, God knew, whatever. But our ancestors created this tale about standing up, about being bold, about being confident, about knowing our minds, about knowing justice, and even in the face of authority, not wilting, not backing down. And we do it not just for the people we like and the people we know, we do it for everyone, even the people we don't know, even the people we've never met, because that's what it means to be a person. That's what it means to take responsibility. That's what it means to be part of the human community. As Abraham, Joshua, or Heschel said, some are guilty, but all are responsible. So we continue our service as we redress the Torah and wrap it. And we read. We cover the Torah with the colors of the seasons and the images of nature, with roots into the past and branches stretched forward to tomorrow. We adorn our scroll. May the work of our hands be woven into the tapestry of time. Please rise. Please be seated. So as I mentioned, when I began reading the Torah portion, people ask at Beth Adam, do you say the name of God when you read the Torah portion? And now we've answered that question. But there are other questions that people have asked me over the years that I think this Torah portion really helps us explore. People said, are you religious at Beth Adam? Are you authentic? And are you Jewish? So we're going to use the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and a little bit of the binding of Isaac to explore those questions. Because it's really a tale of two Abrahams. So we just heard the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham stands up in front of God, looks him eye to eye, face to face, says, what kind of God are you? Don't you know justice? Are you going to kill innocent people along with guilty ones? Doesn't back down, argues for people he never met. Right? That's the story. We roll the scroll a little bit further on, and we get to the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, that's what it's called in Hebrew. One of the famous biblical stories. God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son. Begins, Elohim nisa et Avraham, that's the opening verse of that, and God tests Abraham. That's the story. God wants to see what Abraham will do, and we all know the story. We don't read it here anymore. You can go on to Beth Adam's website and read why I don't like reading that story. You'll figure it out pretty quickly. What does Abraham do? He gets up early in the morning to sacrifice his son. We know that Abraham was willing to do it. That's the rabbis make. Why does he get up early to do it? Because he's willing to. Doesn't argue with God, doesn't question God, just tells his kid to pack his bags and let's go off to a place that God will show you. And when they're walking, Isaac says to Abraham, where's the animal for the sacrifice? And Abraham says, don't worry, God will provide it. Abraham was willing to kill his son. Rabbis spend a lot of time trying to show that, Abraham, God stayed Abraham's hand. We do all kinds of things in an effort, rabbis, to make a story that is horrific, not horrific. It's a horrible story. It's about killing a son. There's all kinds of legends, too, that Isaac was scarred emotionally by that. That's why Isaac never spoke anywhere in the Bible after that. So there are two very different Abrahams that we see. The Abraham that's willing to argue for the stranger, and the Abraham that is totally obedient. It's a striking contrast. It is a striking contrast between a bold, dynamic, courageous Abraham and one who simply was willing to follow authorities. Think about it. It's the same characters, Abraham and God. It's very much the same. Now, it's only logical to assume that both of these are part of our Jewish tradition. They're both Jewish. They were both written by our ancestors. Now, clearly, they were written by different ancestors. There was one set of ancestors, authors, who wrote about a God or an Abraham who was willing to be obedient. And there was another set of ancestors who were saying, nah, we have an Abraham that's willing to stand up and argue. It's in the text. The text was edited multiple times. It could have been taken out. It could have been excised. So we get both of those stories. We get to decide which stream of Judaism speaks to us. Which stream of Judaism resonates with who we are and what we believe. Too often, there is this misconception that Judaism is this monolithic system of belief, that it came into existence and only one voice spoke and only one voice articulated what it meant to be Jewish. I'm here to tell you, we just read another voice. You heard it. I didn't make that story up. There are multiple streams in Judaism. And unfortunately, what happens is one voice always seems to dominate the voice of tradition. And it seems to say there's only one way to be Jewish. And that's not true. As I mentioned on Rosh Hashanah, those who control the past control the future. Those who want to claim that there was only one voice of Judaism, one way to be honest, authentically Jewish, want to determine what the Jewish future is. An open and honest reading teaches us that, like us, our ancestors struggled with theology. They may have used different words, they may have done it a little bit differently, but clearly they were struggling with highly important moral and ethical and theological questions. They were struggling with the idea of what justice is. They were struggling about the idea about the innocent and the guilty and how innocent people are killed in war. They were struggling with the idea of, do you stand up to the ultimate authority of the universe or do you back down? They were struggling, and they pointed out that one can understand the idea of God differently. We oftentimes use that word and assume everybody agrees and there's one idea. But as Karen Armstrong in A History of God observes, there's no one unchanging idea contained in that word. That word has meant different things at different times to different people. And we see it in this particular text. We're probably, and we're not going to go into a deep study of when this text was written, but it was probably written by two different groups at two different times. And so when people say, do you believe in God? The question doesn't even begin to touch the surface. It doesn't begin to touch the depth of what the Torah teaches us. Because we learn that for Abraham, in this particular, there are two different ways to understand God. One is a God that knows everything, and if he tells you to do something, you do it. And another God that might not know everything, might not understand justice. So the essential question is never, do you believe in God? The essential question is always, what do you believe about God if you use that term? And it may be that you use the term for what you don't believe as well. But different people use that term differently. And it's important because oftentimes it is used to marginalize, because there's somehow an unwritten idea that if you use the word, you are more ethical and moral than those who don't use that word. There's another question that doesn't get asked quite the same way. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human? What is our responsibility? We talk about what do you believe about God, but what do you believe about human beings? What do you think a human being should do? What's our responsibility to one another, to ourselves, to the future? Do we have responsibility? Do we have a voice? Do we have agency? I think we spend more time talking, oftentimes focusing on the theological question rather than the very human question of what do we do? How do we act? We learn from these two tales, the Abraham story of Sodom and Gomorrah and the Abraham story of the binding of Isaac, that theological notions are not fixed and frozen in time. They change and they evolve. And the responsibilities of human beings change and evolve. It is not fixed and frozen for all time. Recognizing that there are two different characterizations of Abraham also raises the question, who was the more religious and who was the more spiritual? Was the Abraham of Sodom and Gomorrah the religious or the anti-religious Abraham? Was he the spiritual one or the non-spiritual one? Was Abraham, who was willing to kill his son, the religious one who understood questions of spirituality? There are those who claim that the Abraham who was willing to kill his son, he was the religious one. He was the spiritual one. He was the one who was willing to act without questioning. He was the one who was willing to accept that when God spoke, he had nothing to do but to follow. Those same folks would argue that the Abraham who stood up to God, he was the less religious. He didn't take God so seriously. He didn't take spirituality, didn't have that spiritual soul, that spiritual notion, that he was a skeptic. I think that categorization is wrong, but it's far too common today. Too many people confuse theology, ritual, with blind obedience. I believe it's incorrect. There does not exist a correlation between one concept of God and the depth of one's religious values and spiritualities. They're independent of each other. I would argue, in fact, that the Abraham of Sodom and Gomorrah was in fact the more religious and the more spiritual. He was willing to stand up for what he knew was true. Now, this isn't just ancient sort of language. These things are still taking place. I want to just contextualize it a little, because there are those who come out of this Abraham willing to kill his son, that's the way to be religious. They're still speaking out there. They're still talking. They're still promoting a Judaism that is narrow and angry. February of 23, the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel blocked and harassed Women of the Wall. For those of you who don't know what Women of the Wall are, they are exactly that. Women, religious women who want to pray at the Western Wall. They want to be egalitarian. They want to do what we do here. We're sitting together, men and women. Women can read from our Torah. But the ultra-Orthodox stand in their way. They fight with them. They spit on them. They shove them. They abuse them. All in the name of tradition. This year, ultra-Orthodox Jews protested being drafted. They threw rocks at police. Why? All in the name of tradition. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, pulled out of a city in the West Bank because there was so much verbal abuse and physical abuse by ultra-Orthodox Jews there. And the chief Sephardic rabbi, just in 2023, blamed a series of earthquakes in Israel on the LGBTQ community. He also called Reform Jews evil people who do every injustice in the world against the Torah, and described the Women of the Wall, these are the women who want to pray there, the Satan that confuses. They do not care about prayer or about the Torah. They care about the Western Wall and the temple. All they care about is uprooting the Torah, trampling and running over the dignity of the Torah. All that's in the name of tradition. All that is in the name of the Abraham who was willing to blindly obey. I ask you, do such acts of violence and disregard for individuals proclaim deep spiritual feelings? Do eyes that stare with contempt and hostility reflect deep religious and spiritual feelings? I think not. Anger, hostility, obedience, blind obedience to authority, a sense of superiority runs counter to my understanding of what it means to embrace and celebrate a spiritual and religious quality in one's life. For me, there exists a spirituality, a natural spirituality that arrives out of the human experience, a spirituality and a religiosity that can be celebrated from a humanistic, liberal religious perspective. It arises and erupts from one's soul and one's mind. You can't impose spirituality on people. You can't make them have a religious sense. That's something that comes from within us. Trying to conform to somebody else's idea stands in opposition, I would suggest, to that spiritual quality, because it emanates from people. It emanates from a sense of compassion and a sense of caring. I imagine that Abraham wandering to Sodom and Gomorrah, knowing that there was a God who's going to destroy it, and seeing people who were different than he, people who may not even spoken the same language. And yet he felt something. Empathy, compassion, concern, justice. Didn't come from outside him. It came from within him. That's a spiritual and religious person. An enlightened humanistic spirituality is grounded in the worldview and our understanding of the universe and how it functions. We are living at a time when we're seeing the universe on our screens. Images being relayed to us from the Webb telescope of galaxies and the birth of stars and clouds that are trillions of miles large. How can we not be moved by its power? How can we not be touched by the sense of wonder and awe that the universe burst into existence and all that exists is connected, literally? And we can see it with our own eyes. Science doesn't diminish a sense of wonder, doesn't diminish a sense of awe. It allows us to experience it and also understand it and appreciate it. A humanistic spirituality isn't anti-intellectual. It isn't anti-scientific. It doesn't demand that we deny some aspect of ourself or the human experience in order to touch that spiritual, religious peace. It does require us, however, to allow our non-rational selves at times to come to the surface. And I'm using the word non-rational, not irrational, non-rational. That sense of wonder, love, beauty. We can look at a sunset. We can understand that the sun really isn't setting, but the earth is rotating. But we can allow its beauty, its majesty to touch us. Some of us just recently went not too far from where we are to see a solar eclipse. Why? It was magical. We understood it. We could write it down. We could chart it out. We understood all the dimensions. But being in that moment of total darkness was awe-inspiring. It touched us. We allowed our non-rational selves to enjoy and celebrate and be in a moment that was absolutely unique and absolutely natural. We don't have to deny science. We don't need to deny our intellect to be moved, to be touched, to be compassionate. Our non-rational self provides us all these avenues to encounter the world in which we live. It asks us, maybe more than that, it demands from us that we don't just skim across the surface, that we really delve in, pause, experience the moment. It means allowing the beauty and, at times, the ugliness of the world to penetrate us, touch us, move us, elevate us, cause us sorrow. It means to not hold back from oneself. It's the kind of person that Abraham at Sodom and Gomorrah was. Think about how many people run away from the town of strangers. Think of all those people who run away, who don't want to stand up to authority because they might get arrested. Abraham's case, he might get killed. Think about all those people who say, I don't need to speak for people I don't know. They don't matter. Think about this Abraham guy. Left his home, probably walking around in a pair of old sandals, dusty, and goes, there's this town. People, I don't know them. Innocent people are going to get killed along with bad people, and I have a responsibility to stand up. Me, one person. I have a voice. I have power. I need to stand up and speak the truth no matter what and no matter to whom I need to speak it to. To me, that's a deeply religious person, spiritual person, a person who faces the challenges with confidence, a power that transcends time and place, a person whose depth of feeling was so intense that when he or she sees suffering, they empathize with those they don't even know. Not that Abraham that just followed the rules. We needed an Abraham that stood up. I hold in high esteem not that obedient Abraham, that subservient Abraham. That's why I can't read that Torah portion of him willing to kill his son. He abdicated personal responsibility. He abdicated agency. He abdicated the power to think, all in the name of tradition, and I was just following the rules. I hold the Abraham that found compassion in his heart for innocence, that had the integrity and the courage to stand up, that used his mind to reason and to think and to attempt to change what occurred, even when it may have been futile. Because there are times we do bang our head against the wall. But that is the right thing to do, to try to make a change. I hold up that Abraham who stood at Sodom and Gomorrah acting in a truly religious, ethical, authentic Jewish way. Let us walk in the footsteps of that Abraham.
The ways of our ancestors shed light upon the present. Rooted in tradition, we feel joined, an inseparable part of the human experience. But unchallenged conventions can also lead us into the shadows of dogma, occupying us with distant memories while the present goes unnoticed and the future sits bound and blindfolded. We cannot stay immersed in our past without losing the way. In each generation, our survival depends on the creative gifts of sensitive children who know they will someday be ancestors. Unshackled and with eyes open to all possibilities, we accept the challenge to create our own future. We must find our own way. The chain still remains unbroken. It still remains. We sift from the past that which is most vital for growth. We shake loose and discard the time-worn judgments and ill-fitting customs. We keep alive the distilled essence, the fundamental truths of our collective experience. We respect the sage, reward the inventor, and embrace the poet. We decide our own precarious path. With each step, we have a choice. In every act, we choose alone. The chain still remains unbroken. It still remains.
Courage is a rhythm. Conviction, a wave. Deeds inspire. Words give hope. The hardest act is to hold our gaze, to not turn away. When we choose to speak, when we move to defy, when we leave the protection of our thoughts, when we call others to take a stand, bearing witness, hearing injustice, feeling pain, voicing kindness, offering a hand. With these acts, we repair the world. Our impact remains after we are gone. The memories we create transcend time. Even if we never see the ripple, even if we never feel the wake. Yom Kippur is a day of personal memories. We remember ourselves as we once were. We push our way into the corners of our minds to cover our youth. We allow ourselves to feel again the thrill of childhood delight, the excitement of discovery, the sense that we could conquer the world. Prodded by our intellect, we allow the sharpness of memories to flood our beings. We again feel the pain of adolescence, the uncertainties, the awkwardness, our struggles to emerge. We recall the excitement of a first love, secrets shared between friends, taking pleasure in intellectual awakening. We remember the yesterdays of our adulthood with its disappointments, our disillusion, some moments of despair. Comforted by the presence of others, we allow the pain of our imperfections, of our failures, our lost vision and wasted dreams to fill our souls. We remember, too, the moments of triumph, of warm companionship, of laughter, of love. We have enjoyed the sense of community, the closeness of sharing, the satisfaction of a job well done. With our friends and our loved ones, we allow ourselves to feel again the happiness we have known. We remember those who worked and struggled so that we would have the comforts of home. They shared their warmth and laughter, and we knew the meaning of joy. We still see the familiar posture and hear the distinctive voice. We have known the uniqueness of one singular life. We recreate moments lost in time. We share in the feelings of loss. We miss the breath of the presence. We resolve today to cherish, preserve, and build upon those memories that strengthen our lives. For those who wish at this time, please feel free to rise. We stand as we recall those whom death has taken from us, those who've died as a result of the violence and the terror and war that mars our planet, those who died as a result of famine, natural disasters, those who've died defending the principles of justice and democracy and of peace, those who died risking their lives to save others. Think of those who have no one to call them today but us. We think of our loved ones who no longer walk among us. Ein b'dei hamavet hakoach la'akor ma shebun balev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Im dama'ot be'einenu, be'et efleinu, nishmor al zecher Achuvenu. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Please be seated. How easy it is to lose our way, to forget our purpose, to ignore that which we value most. Bumped and prodded by the demands of daily living, we often sacrifice what is dearest. During this hour of self-reflection, we challenged ourselves to recapture our sense of perspective. We strive to see ourselves with eyes unhampered by the urgency of daily life as we struggle to regain our balance. Buffeted by questions, hoping to awaken ourselves to those values we cherish, we know our task is not easy. We accept that as we move from the luxury of this hour to the pressures of tomorrow, we will falter in our steps, act in ways we're likely to regret. We will not achieve perfection, but neither will we acquiesce to our failings. We pledge ourselves that we will face the dilemmas of tomorrow with dignity and integrity. We will be honest with ourselves, acknowledging when we have fallen short, so that we do not mistake mediocrity for success. We will remember what we value, so we do not extol the unimportant as the ultimate that can be achieved.
Good morning and Shana Tova to everybody here in person and online. I'm Martha Keene. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Beth Adam. Thank you, Rabbi Bar, for the services this morning and for all the services, leadership, mentorship, and passion for your work and for us over the last 44 years. And we all send our well wishes to Rabbi Werber for a speedy recovery. A few announcements. As a reminder, we do not have Sunday school this Sunday or adult ed, but there will be an invasive species removal here on site. It will be hosted by our climate team. The event runs from 9 until 12, and lunch will follow. To help everybody estimate how much to order and what tools will be required, please reach out to Ann Cooper to RSVP. There will be a celebration of welcome for Rabbi Werber on November 15th at 7:30. Please RSVP to Melissa Weiss. And on a final note, we do realize there are non-members who enjoy attending these services. If you'd like more information on membership, please find someone with a name tag for more information.
So I think our food drive is drawn to a close. Is that correct? So they're going to be loading up the cars. Do you need help? Okay, they don't need help. But if you see someone carrying a bag and you go, oh, they could need some help, you're allowed to even do that, right? Abraham would. Pick up the bag, carry it, they're going to schlep it, they're going to go to the Loveland Interfaith Food Effort life, we call it, and to help those in need, because the population it needs that. About 14% of the community of Loveland uses that food bank. So our food, this food drive is really important. Those who are online, if you're not in Cincinnati, make a donation to a food bank. We have serious needs in our nation about people who are food insecure. And our efforts make a difference. All of our efforts make a difference. So they're going to be doing that. So just be careful too as you're leaving, as they're schlepping stuff out. Just watch for them. We have a conversation after this about noon in the library if you want to join me for that. Then there's the children's service at 2:30. The online memorials at 3:30, and then our memorial, the bricks and mortar memorial here in the sanctuary, is at 4:30. But if you want to come, we begin to light the Yortzeit candles. You can come in and light a candle about 10 after 4. So if you have a lot going on, the best thing to know is always go to bethadam.org. That's where you will find our calendar and what's upcoming. So we're going to close our service. Those who wish may rise as we sing together. The choir is going to sing, and then you're going to answer with a really loud, bold voice, not timid. Be like that guy, Abraham. Really just get in the face. Okay. Healthy year.
Maybe a happy year.
Maybe a year of peace.
Maybe a year of peace. Maybe a good year. Maybe a happy year. Maybe a year of peace. Maybe a good year. Maybe a happy year. Maybe a happy year. Maybe a year of peace.
May we have the strength.
May we have strength to make it so, to make it so.
Shana Tova lecho b'nei Yisrael, ulecho b'nei Kadosh. Shana Tova lecho b'nei Yisrael, ulecho b'nei Kadosh.
May those words, may it be a healthy year, a year of peace, a good year for all people of Israel and all people everywhere. May those words be realized in the year to come. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.